that we're aware it's being recorded. I like that. So I'll bring that finance team meeting to order, and I think we're expecting Jared at 8:05. So we'll just try to keep an eye out for him coming. And this meeting is primarily to review the humongous agenda that we have. And so I'm going to turn it over to our master of ceremonies, Doug.
Thank you. And Linda, if I just could real quick before we jump into the agenda, I think we're scheduled for another finance meeting next week. And I know Kate has things that we want to touch on with that. And then hopefully after we get done with the agenda, there's a few things we just want to touch on also relative to the AUDs as we go and get that submitted and stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So let me share my screen so we can start going through the agenda. And you are absolutely correct. It is a monster agenda with a lot of different things on it. So, all right, can everybody see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's skip over circulation and communications, privilege of floor. Kathy does have a appointment on this agenda. Kathy, I don't know if there's anything you want to add relative to that or not. No. Okay.
I have a quick question. When is Leaf's start date?
In terms of being in the building, Leaf and I were talking about maybe sometime next week, but I think Kathy I think you've already officially appointed him, right? So, I mean, we could even say the 15th, I think, because I think he's planning on after that. So, and Joe's joining us. Welcome, Joe. We're just getting started. So. In under presentations, just touch on this real quick. I do expect a number of representatives from the various fire departments. This is by contract, they're required to provide their annual report. We've attached those to the agenda. They'll be there to answer questions or just to give even a brief little hi, how are you? Hope everybody's good type thing. So anyway, public hearings. Let me just touch on this. I have had conversations with the seller of this property. There's a couple of things that we'll need to discuss and further in the coming weeks is what I would say. I don't think that we're at a point right now where we're ready to do anything relative to this property, 3950 County Road 16. So I am going to ask you to kick this out, kick the can down the road for a little ways because we've got more things to talk about relative to that. So.
And when you say that, you mean we'll close the public hearing, but we won't take action on the property?
You can leave the public hearing open. I suggested continuing it to June and just leave it open.
Okay.
And that way it won't come back on the agenda until June. So.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yep. And then we do have a new public hearing on the the draft Middle Cheshire and Hospital Service Corridor Active Transportation Plan. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at the resolution. I know there was some concern about that. I'll touch on that in a second. But because this crosses municipal jurisdictions, and because there's some things in it that really may not be able to be done that are being recommended, all I used was the word acknowledge. And so there's no words in the resolution relating to accepting or approving or anything at all like that. So.
Well, and I saw you actually even put in it that you recognize there's things that are not feasible. So right. That was a good way to temper it.
Yep. So, okay. So then jumping right down to resolutions. The first one is just the standard monthly financial report. Kate, I don't know if there's anything on that that's come up that you want to touch on or not.
I don't think anything has come up as far as the regular monthly reports, and the executive summary for the year is pretty standard. But I did include a budget report for the capital projects with the agenda that it's as of 12/31/20. But you can take a look at where the capital projects stand and take a look in relation to the budgets, what those are looking like. And as always, feel free to let me know if you have any questions on any of those.
One of the things I was thinking about is, would we want to, at some point, review our goals around our reserves? You know, we've got these not more than 2 months, not less than 6 months, and that kind of wording around all of these things. Would we want to at some point have like a mini review in the finance team to make sure we still think all those are appropriate?
Yeah, Linda, I think that's a great point in terms of our fund balance policy is what you're.
Right, yeah,
referring
that's what
to.
I'm referring to. I didn't have the right words.
Yeah, that's okay. The other thing that at some future finance meeting, we need to revisit the capital improvement plan, and we need to talk about that. Kate's been working on that. Kate's been working on that with Jim, I know, and some of the other department heads and everything. But it would be great to review that before we get into budget season. And really, for us, budget season really starts for staff. It really starts June, July timeframe.
Yeah.
So it'll be coming fast and furious here. So.
Well, so I think probably that means that for the next couple of months, we will actually hold our second finance meeting and we can focus on these topics and get them out of the way ahead of budget.
Yeah, I think we need to. I think it would be good to touch on some of those things.
Perfect, thanks.
Yep. So the next resolution is the resolution that Chris Nadler has drafted. For the most part, Chris Nadler has drafted relative to the creating a special election. So, I know, Linda, I did see your comment on there. Chris and I had talked about that. We did add another whereas to the actual resolution, but we're also trying to give the town board the most flexibility as possible, knowing that you, as the town board, are the ultimate decision makers. You're getting direction from the residents of the community, but the board itself is the ultimate decision makers. So we added the extra whereas about the sunset and the $6 million per transaction, but left the question
More vague,
general.
yeah.
Do you want that sunset stuff though in that question, the sunset provision and the cost? Not to
So-
exceed?
It says has discussed. It's not actually.
But I'm saying in the question because of the resolution won't be on the referendum, it will just be the question. So I'm just wondering.
That is correct. That's exactly what we're saying, is not to put that in the question, because that's up to the town board to decide that.
Gotcha. Okay, very good.
Anybody else on the board have anything they want to say about that, since we're in an official meeting? Okay,
No, I guess everybody's going to realize what we're talking about.
okay,
All right, and obviously, even over the next couple of days, be thinking about it. You can always amend the resolution at the town board meeting. So whatever you want to do. Okay, next resolution. This is the seeker for the official Outhouse West improvements, and huge shout out to Jim Fletcher, as I have been preoccupied with land acquisition discussions. Jim has kept the ball rolling on Outhouse West improvements in the inclusive playground, and I can't thank you enough, Jim. And Jim has been working with MRB and a whole variety of folks, but we officially have to go through the secret process for that. So this really kicks that off for the proposed improvements with Outhouse West for the playground, classifying as a type 1 action so that we can go through that process. Giving notice to all the interested stakeholders about us going through the process, and then enabling us to move forward with actually publishing that as required under a type 1 action. It's so type 2 actions are type 2 actions are a town board action that doesn't require any further review. And the majority of times you see us list on your resolutions unlisted actions. Those are actions that are either neither type 1 nor type 2, and ultimately the town board gets to decide whatever type any action is. Type 1 is traditionally 10 acres or more of disturbance, and specifically because of the magnitude of this project, it does involve land that's more than 10 acres. It does include actual construction and redevelopment of land. We just felt it was best to go ahead and do a type 1 action and go through the process. It doesn't require a full environmental impact statement or anything like that. It does require us to do the EAF, which Lance has already done for us, but enough about seeker, I'm sure. Any questions on that? So, no. It checks the I, or dots the I's and checks the, or crosses the T's. That's what this does. So anyway. Okay, the next resolution here, our insurance renewal agreement. We haven't had a whole lot of chance to talk about this, but Chris Hubler has been working for us behind the scenes. You might remember last year we went out and actually did an RFP last year for insurance. We had bids from CIG Insurance and a variety of the carriers that they work with, as well as NYMER. NYMER came in again, and they were actually a little bit higher. You might remember from the conversation last year when we went through the RFP. So we stayed with CIG Insurance and Chris and our carrier. We renewed again last year, HCC. Chris went through for us and worked with 6 different insurance carriers. It came down to Select Insurance and HCC, Houston Casualty Company, which is our current carrier, as the 2 lowest bids. And Chris really did a fantastic job for us of going through and showing the differences between the 2 bids for the insurance. And it's his recommendation. And I spent a couple of hours actually with him going through everything in detail. It's 100% my recommendation that you stay with our current carrier of HCC. HCC has been great to work with. You know that we have several pending litigation matters, and they are very quick to jump on that. The cost was a couple of $1,000s more to go with HCC than Selective. However, it's a little bit like comparing apples to oranges. When you got into the details of the Selective quote, like for instance, the coverage wasn't as good as the HCC coverage. And I'll give you one example of many. There was an umbrella coverage of $10 million. With Selective, they say, okay, the maximum you can have in a year is $10 million. With HCC, they say, okay, the maximum you can have is $10 million, but that's $10 million for litigation, $10 million for loss of real property, 10 million, and it really adds up. So we get much more expanded coverage. And another big factor is Selective required us to insure each of the cabins at Ononda individually instead of collectively. And the problem with that is, you know, keep in mind, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, we had a little storm, a little tornado microburst that came over the hill over by Fox Ridge and created some damage. If something like that were to happen at Ononda, we could very quickly get hurt by having every one of those cabins insured separately, as opposed to one parcel and being able to go in and fix any damage. So for the extra $2,000 that HCC was, I think it's well worth it to stick with HCC instead of Selective. So,
Hey, Doug,
yes, sir.
you need to take a look at the resolution. You've got the 2 quotes received from HCC and Travelers. And then at the end, you've got a thing in there. It says, now therefore be it resolved, the town has reviewed the proposals and determined the action to be a seeker type 2.
Mm-hmm.
Do those need to be changed?
No, that's correct.
Oh, really? You have a seeker in there for insurance bids?
Yeah, so a type 2 action being that there's nothing else needed on the part of the town board.
Okay, and the Travelers is good versus Selective?
Yeah, let me just double check that now that you're saying that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see, maybe I said the wrong.
Maybe it was Travelers and not
Maybe it
Selective.
was Travelers and not Selective. Give me a second here. It was Travelers.
Okay.
Sorry, it wasn't Selective, it was
No,
Travelers.
that's all right. Just
So,
wanted to make sure.
Good question, good question. Selective was the highest. Good question. So, good. Any other questions on insurance?
No.
Okay. The next one, in the past, we've declined to get cybersecurity insurance. I'm thinking for the $3,000 based on our past year, I'm thinking we should probably go for it.
Yeah.
What do they do in cyber insurance? Because this is not a lot of money, but you think about the fact that we were hacked and they wanted like several $1 million for our computers back and all that other stuff. What?
Yeah. So it actually details here, and I went through this with Chris Hubler, but they would pay up to, where is the
$1 million for extortion.
It's not that high. It might be well, yeah, maybe it is $1 million. Yeah, the $1 million would be the payout, I guess. But it would also cover the cost of loss of equipment. And so that was the big thing with the ransomware attack that we had. We ended up losing 3 desktops that would have been covered by insurance if we had it. it cost us, when all was said and done, it probably, that ransomware attack cost us between time and computers almost $3,000. And so the insurance is about the same, but it would provide us the extra protection. So
Well, we also incurred costs from our computer people, the $75 an hour folks.
that's what I mean. That
Oh.
plus our time. Because that's $75 an hour. We buy the 100-hour blocks. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, and then the desktops that had to be replaced and that sort of thing. So it does cover that. Yeah, it is $1 million coverage there. And then the actual computer and stuff. So it's $3,700 is the total
Okay.
cost for that. And the good news is our insurance, we budgeted more than what we'll need for the insurance. So we already have enough budgeted in the insurance line to cover it. So. Okay. Any other questions on insurance? Okay.
Nope.
The next two here are just acknowledgements. Our auditing firm has completed the annual associated uniform procedures for court and the town clerk's financial transactions for the year 2020, and their report is attached. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. Jean, is there anything you wanted to jump in and add with that?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
I did have a meeting with Judge Prell. I think I know that they had expressed some concerns in the past about the opportunity to have dialogue with the auditors, but I believe that it sounds like that all was done correctly this year, they felt like, and they were happy with everything. And really, and I know you've heard me say this before, Kristen has done such a great job with the court office. It's night and day difference with what is going on there, and things are running so much smoother. So
I was just going to say that the transition in personnel has really contributed to a better relationship with the auditors, I think, because she's actually trying to work cooperatively with them.
Right. Yep, for sure. So the next one here, Kate, do you want to touch on this? This is a fund balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I had two resolutions that I've asked Doug to add for the increase of fund balance, and they're both relatively small, but because it is an increase in fund balance and not just an increase in a particular GL from another account, we wanted to make sure that we brought it to the board and got your approval. In this case, the fund balance in the fire protection district is for what the county calls erroneous and refunded taxes, which would be if a tax was charged in error to a property or if it had to be refunded by the county to the resident. So then they turn around and charge the town. And our budget for fire protection this year was spot on to the dollar for our contracts. However, that did not include $19.85 in erroneous tax charges. So here in this resolution, what I'm asking is to increase the appropriated fund balance by $20 so that we can be sure we're not exceeding our expense line when we pay the fire contracts this month.
Good.
And then you want to go ahead and touch on the next one here too?
Yeah, the next one has to do with the Center Point Lighting District, which Jim so graciously corrected me that it is actually the Center Point Lighting District is Campus Drive in front of FLCC. So regardless of it being called
in front of
Center Point.
Acoustos Technologies. In front of
Acoustos Technologies. Yes. Campus Drive. So it's not Center Point Apartments. And so in this, Jim has collected a quote. Do you want to say anything on the quote you received, Jim?
Received two quotes from two different vendors. We budgeted, I don't remember the exact amount, $4,000. They came in at $43.94. So we need to move a few $100 to pay for the cost of the light fixtures.
Yeah, it came in at $48.19.
Oh.
So we need to increase the appropriation. I think, Doug, you just need to go down. Can you go down to the next page, please? There we go. So we'd increase it by $820. And what that'll do is it'll cover the cost of the quote that Jim got to install the new street lights on Campus Drive.
And this money is already in their fund balance. You're just saying we're changing the line that said how much of it we were appropriating in the year.
That's exactly correct. Yes. I think I did note the fund balance current in there. Neither one of them will be put in a negative situation by increasing the appropriations.
Okay.
So we've appropriated 4394. We'll increase that by $800 and reduce the 3768 by $820.
That was a budgeted expense. It's something we've been talking about previously.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we threw a kind of a dark number at the wall, and then when we got the quotes, it was just a little bit higher. So this is really administrative and not putting us in any negative situation with fund balances.
Great, thank you.
The next one here is just our annual court contract for court security services, in anticipation that they'll be able to start holding meetings and they'll have police officers back in the building. So this is just doing that. And then this next one is also just our annual agreement that we have in place with the Ontario County Historical Society for the money that we pay them. Keep in mind, we cannot gift municipal resources. That includes these financial appropriations that we make annually to these entities. So we put an agreement in place to cover for the services that we're receiving on behalf of that money. So, and then, okay, any other questions on those two? Okay. The next one is something that was actually a 2020 planned expense that we had to carry over with COVID that we'd cut out of the budget. This is a new playground feature at Outhouse Park. And this would be another pirate ship so that the little kiddies can have a little pirate war between the two pirate ships over at Outhouse Park. One from shoot cannonballs from one pirate ship to the next. This whole concept originally came about as a result of Houston Casualty Company sent actually the insurance inspector out to the town. Jim and I met with them. They went through a lot of the stuff here on the campus, and then I went around with them to all of our playgrounds. And the gentleman was just a wealth of information. We learned so much that day from them coming out. And we've made a variety of changes to the way that we've done things. We've also, Chris Jensen is now a certified playground inspector for us as a result of that meeting. But one of the things that came about is we need to expand the mulch area behind the swing set from a liability perspective. Who I would have never known. The mulch area has to be twice as long as the chain on a swing behind the swing to meet the playground institute safety technology requirements or whatever it is. So when we do that, we have a lot more of a mulchy area over by the other pirate ship to expand that off and square that off. And so it's perfect spot for another pirate ship. So they've gone and working with the Parks Committee, and Troy has really done a lot of due diligence for us and researching a bunch of different places. I know at one point we were talking to 25 different companies about the possibility of getting another pirate ship and what that would look like and how much it would be. And this is the lowest quote. This is the lowest bid here for the equipment. So it's certainly not cheap by any means, but we did put the money in this year's budget. So it is in there. It is a budgeted expense for 21. So any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. The next resolution here. So we have been doing interviews for the HR position that is vacant, the full-time HR position. Kathy was great to join the team as we did interviews. Kate, Sarah, Michelle, myself. We interviewed, the county approved 3 individuals for us to interview from the civil service perspective. We interviewed, and we first narrowed it down to 2, and then we really kind of all rallied around Lindsay here. And so this would be appointing Lindsay to this full-time position. Lindsay was previously human resources for Target and is currently human resources, a regional person for Amazon. But she has been, she lives in the Canandaigua community, technically, I believe in the town of Hopewell, but she has been very interested in coming to work for the town of Canandaigua, was interested in the HR position when we originally created it, when Sam filled it, and actually had been on the list ever since that point for the last 3 years. So it's something that she is really sought after, and she was immediately interested. And she just sent me a text message literally while Kate was talking, saying that she'd like to start on Monday. So super excited to have her coming on board. So
So will that be her start date is Monday the 15th?
yes.
Great. That'll be a relief to have somebody there, even though training takes time, but
Yeah, I mentioned this with Kathy when we were doing as we were having the follow-up after the interviews. The challenge is bringing someone in. We were very fortunate with Sam. Sam came to us with HR experience after working with Victor. Bringing a HR person in, they're going to bring a lot of knowledge relative to human resources, which is great, but there's the whole other side of the government side of that with civil service and all that, which she'll have to learn. So there's still going to be a learning curve.
yep.
This next one, Kate was following up on this for us. This is authorization for us to extend the rental of the boathouse at Ononda for 1 year. We did 1 year because the transfer with Ononda, and the DEC tells me that that's in process. The legal stuff is all being worked out. They told me they just sent it to Albany for final sign off. So I think that'll be happening, and then we can look at a multi-year agreement with the Sheriff's Department after that. So.
Yes, the yearly rental fee remained the same as well, just in case there was any question on that.
Okay, the next is the Middle Cheshire Road plan that we already touched on. And, you know, Terry, you and I had conversations about this, and Jim, you and I did too. But, you know, there's definitely, it's a long resolution, but there's some things in that not so sure it's ever going to be feasible to actually do. So I added this extra, Linda was talking about town board of town Canada acknowledges certain concepts may not be feasible and would need further consideration. Just so it gives you an out that when somebody comes along and says, well, it says in the plan you have to do this one in particular, it crosses over into the city of Canandaigua, and also like the things that we talked about, the trail next to the water tanks might not be the greatest idea in the world. Maybe there's something we can do to figure it out, but it needs more review. So.
Yes, certainly.
All right. The next one here, I think we're kind of drifting from finance into public works as we're looking at the agenda resolutions here now. So this next one, the Public Works Committee, Planning Public Works Committee reviewed the Morel proposal. They're requesting an increase in density. So this would set the public hearing. This doesn't do anything except for set the public hearing for the April meeting on the request. Does anybody have any questions on that? Is everybody familiar with that? So, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Jim, do you want to touch on?
So this is a vehicle that we budgeted in 2020, but we pulled just due to COVID, and it's replacing a 2013 vehicle, which is longer than we normally keep vehicles per our
policy.
thank you, and replaced it with a new pickup truck for the water department.
Hey, Jim, do you want to touch on this one too?
Yep. This one here is for the water main extension on Kramer Road to create redundancy of the new tanks on Kramer Road. It's a water main we're going to be installing along it to connect the two ends. This next one is the annual mowing contract with 332 between basically Yerkes Road and Town Line Road. This one here is for us to, we are going to, could you go down a little bit? Yeah, okay. We're going to add to the existing agreement with MRB that they proposed to us for additional services for CME to go out and do soil borings on the outhouse park west for the foundation work to know what's in the ground, and also for putting the parking lots so we can put in the correct sub base to support the parking lot and the building that's going to go in.
in the building. You know, we had our Citizens Academy yesterday, and Mike Yarger actually asked a great question during it about this playground and where he could easily find more information about it and stuff. So I thought it was a great point. Sarah's going to work on, and we're going to put some stuff together. We have drawings that you may or may not have seen, or they're not one central location where it's easy to go find them. We have drawings of all this stuff, so we're going to add a web page to the website, kind of like what we did for the land acquisition under projects. So it'll be one stop where you can go and you can see everything, and the building that Jim's talking about. The group is building the building. We're not building the building. We're responsible for ground level and below. The group is responsible for ground level and up, or above ground level. So they're completely building the building, including the foundation for the building. I know that's below ground, but let's see, Jim, do you want to touch on this too?
Yeah, this is a request that either Doug or Kathy or Gene received. I can't remember who got it, for the speed study on Seneca Point Road to be lower than 45. We can ask. I don't foresee DOT changing it lower to 45. But we'll just do diligence for the request has been made and wait for the information to come back, which takes about 6 months. Okay, this is for the material bid that we received in December for the town board to approve Core and Main to allow us to purchase the materials.
Oh, Jim, yeah, Jim's been doing a lot of work on this one.
This here, if you were facing the new all-inclusive playground facing west, you have a tributary that goes underneath Outhouse Park. I'm sorry, Outhouse Road. And Happiest House owns, I'll say, 30 feet to the south. And we had asked for a easement from them so that we can have access to the property for the driveway and also for stormwater for us to get to the tributary that will eventually drain into our ponds on the east side of the road. So we're going to do quality on the west side and quantity on the east side using our ponds.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
It's this area over here.
Correct, that right there. It's like 50 feet wide, 640 feet or 1,000 feet long.
Yeah. And then just while we're looking at this real quick, so here's Outhouse Road up here. This is the entrance coming in here. Keep in mind, there's so many people involved with this. It's so cool. It's taken on a life of its own. But the University of Buffalo is involved with this. They're actually designing the accessibility standards for the universal playgrounds based on this project. The University of Buffalo is using this as the pilot and everything, so it's really cool. But so they wanted a bus drop off. They really believe that we're going to have bus loads of people being brought in, so they wanted to be able to bring a bus in, and even safely a handicap bus that has the handicap ADA accessibilities associated with it. Bring the bus in, stop so that they could unload. This would be the entrance area of the building. Has overhang, it's open, has an overhang where you would come in, and then this would all be the playground area here. And then the bus would be able to come back out, either park across the street or come back here, and then parking. And then Jim's been working with MRB a lot on all the stormwater, and then the rest of this would be the ball field area. Any questions on any of that?
And Happiness House is where on this map?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at it right. Thank you.
Jim, do you want to touch on this one also? This is the annual report.
Each year we compile the data for the state and submit it for the transfer station. And Caitlin, not only does she track that, but we track the brush that we grind, how much is diverted from the landfill, how much we use, food waste, electronics, clothing, and recycling. And this is for you to acknowledge that we've submitted it and that we are, we have done our report for the year for the New York State DEC.
And it is here, the full report. Do you know, because we had talked about, but the whole report is there, you can read through. Was there an increase? I know we had talked about an increase
Year on year.
because of,
Yeah.
April, May, and June, especially in C and D, I don't have the cost comparison. I can attach that, but Caitlin can speak to it real quick.
Hi, everybody. I heard you talking in here. So I've taken, these reports are pretty dry and extensive. I take all this and kind of distill it down and analyze it and compare it to previous years. So I have a presentation that I will talk to Doug about coming and presenting. We did it, I presented it to the Public Works at their last meeting. I know the ECB is interested in hearing it, and I'd be happy to come present to the town board too, and we have a little bit of a smaller agenda. So we definitely had higher collection totals this year. April was our big month during COVID. We just blew through previous years. We had like 175% for garbage and like Jim said, especially C&D, but even our recycling was way up that month as well.
And for the full year, Caitlin, was the comparison still above or did it even out?
It was still slightly above, yes.
Okay, so just slightly. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when we start talking about tons, the numbers seem smaller. But then when we start breaking it down by like our daily average, it makes it a little bit more digestible to understand the increases. And that's something I can certainly go into more detail about.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
the next resolution here is, Troy has actually been, we've been doing some work down at Onondo, even through the winter and cleaning up and kind of like relooking at the use of some of the buildings and everything. But there's a storage area in the bottom of King Hall, and in that there was a lot of miscellaneous roofing materials. So I think he's been throwing those on just on a pallet and just looking to get rid of those. We don't need it. It doesn't match anything that's there. It's just needs to go away. So rather than throwing it out, just try to sell it and see if we can get a couple dollars for it. This next one, this is the, let's see, which one is this? This is the 3355 New York State Route 21. This is this is just a mixed use overlay. This is a rezoning request that has come in for this property, and this is referring it over to the planning board for the advisory report. This doesn't take any action other than just referring it to the planning board for an advisory report. So the details associated with that one, you know what, that resolution, that's what's throwing me there. That resolution has to be amended. I'll have to bring you an amendment. That one slipped by us. This is actually the petition is for the property is actually on State Route 364. And if this will load, I can show you, but this is the southernmost parcel in the town of Canandaigua on 364. There it goes. So this is the town of Gorham, right here where my hand is. This is the town of Gorham. This is the town of Hopewell. This little piece of property, not little, it's 50 some acres, but this parcel right here is in the town of Canandaigua. So it borders the other two municipalities, and so this would be a rezoning request to use this property as a mixed use overlay. And they're proposing to put in townhomes, apartments. So,
And what is its zone now?
so it's in the mixed use overlay, but I believe the current zone is, I don't remember, Linda. I really don't.
Okay,
Remember. I think it's it might be R120. It's possible over there, but in a combination of also agriculture, AR, it would be AR2 down in that area. I have to look at the zoning map specifically. But it's this is the piece here. So for comparison, this is the parking lot right up here. This is County Road 18. This is the parking lot for FLCC, would be right up here next to Star Cider. So it'd be south of that. You keep coming down 364. And then the townhomes that are in the town of Gorham, Otishiani Cove, I think are the name of the townhomes. They're right here. So it's all right there together. So,
Doug, it is currently zoned R120.
is it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any questions on that one? Yeah, we're gonna have to fix that resolution and see that's, okay. Setting a public hearing. This is the language. Gary, you're with us. I know the ordinance committee was working on this before. I've been trying to help you out. This is the lighting one, I believe.
Yeah, yes, it is. And what we tried to do is to update it because the things have changed where you got LED lighting and things like that at the present time. And so we're incorporating that information, as you can see by stuff that was sent out before on the red line, the changes that were deleted and or the things that were deleted and the changes that were made in other areas. And also to try to help out in the regard to, we've had some complaints of neighbors lighting and things like that. And also the amount of lighting from each side of the lake that's showing, and we're trying to, decrease that amount of lighting along the lake and in other areas also.
So this resolution sets a public hearing on the proposed local law for the April meeting. The next one actually does the same thing. It's setting a public hearing on the local law. And this one is this is the manufactured housing, I believe.
The foundations for them.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. This one is the Parks and Rec. There's so many local law. There's multiple resolutions, trying to keep up with them on. This one is the Parks and Rec one. So this one, we've been working on this one for a while now. This is a complete rewrite of the Parks and Rec section of Town Code. So the Parks and Rec Committee has worked on this. We worked closely with the chairman last fall. They've reviewed it multiple times. There's a lot in this local law that, I can't possibly go through all that right now. At some point, we're happy to go through that in more detail. We can do that either in a meeting or maybe at a future finance meeting or even something. I know we went through it at the ordinance committee. Was it a couple of weeks ago or last week, I believe there, Gary? But this is basically a rewrite of the Parks and Rec section of Town Code. It updates some things relative to the process and the way that operations currently work. It also adds, and I just want to make sure everybody's aware of this, it adds a facility alcohol beverage permit. That is specific if you are renting a facility, not a cabin. If you are an entity renting a facility, like for instance, Gorham Lodge, for an event, you have the option of also getting an additional alcohol beverage permit. I've worked very closely with our insurance company. I've worked with Houston Casualty Company, our insurance carrier. They are 100% okay with this because what they said is that the way that this is structured, it puts the liability on the entity, not on the town of Canandaigua. So they are 100% okay with this. Again, it would not be for weddings or for somebody who is having an event or even renting a cabin. It would not be for someone who's having a wedding. It would not be for someone who is renting a cabin to be able to have alcohol. This would be for a group like, for instance, if the Chamber of Commerce wants to do a wine tasting at the park, or if the New York Grape Foundation wants to do a wine tasting at the park. It would have to be an entity holding an event. Then they would also have the ability to get the facility alcohol beverage permit. So. And obviously we can talk about that during the public hearing too and all that stuff. So any comments, questions on that? Okay. This next one, I had touched base with you. I think it was the meeting before last. ZBART is interested in building a new facility. They're currently a town of Canandaigua business. They're interested in building a new facility on the parcel that, as you enter Campus Drive, would be on the left-hand side going between Campus Drive and Thomas Road. And that is currently part of the planned unit development. We've been working with ZBART to try to get their project to be a little bit more in keeping with the Uptown feasibility plan, as we're still working through some of the code updates relative to that. And in doing so, they need to bring the building a little closer to the road and kind of shift it a little bit using some of the natural screening and everything that's there. So in order to do that, we need to amend the planned unit development local law so that they would have the ability to do that. So this resolution sets the public hearing on that. We can go into more detail during the public hearing and everything relative to that, and all the information is there with their plans and everything. So I'll just leave it there. Any questions on that? Okay.
Nope.
All right, this one sets a public hearing for the April meeting. Gary, this one is the manufactured housing one. Do you want to touch on this one?
Just minor changes here. I know Chris has been working with the Department of State in regards to the minor changes. It basically is not going to allow any plastic skirting and things like that on manufactured homes. It's going to be either blocks or concrete, since it is considered a permanent home. Like I said, it's very minor changes in the existing code.
Okay. All right. Any comments, questions? All right. The next resolution adopts the employer health emergency plan that we've all been talking about for months and months and months and months. So this officially adopts it before the April 1st deadline. We can always go back and amend it. It is a policy, but this gets it done. Kathy, I know that you and I still need to connect about that one sentence, but we'll get to it. We've both been a little preoccupied. So, also on that note too, I've been working with the local. So keep in mind, we have our union here at the town of Canandaigua, the employee association, the highway employee association, and then they're part of the CWA 1170. So I'm working with the union representative from CWA 1170. He may have some suggestions to consider. And so I've said the same thing to him. We certainly will entertain any of those suggestions. We'll talk about them as we move forward. But we need to get it adopted before that April 1st deadline. So we can go back and amend it. The next resolution here, this is something new and we haven't really had a chance to talk to you about it, but it's just come up. And as people are trying to get vaccinated and everybody knows it's a challenge to get appointments, and sometimes they're during the day, sometimes they're nights and weekends. I know I'm getting my appointment is this coming Saturday morning. It's, you just have to take them whenever you can get them. So this would allow our employees up to 2 hours of paid leave per occurrence if they get their vaccination, if the time period is during the day. And Jim, do you want to touch on, we just got new updated guidance to our highway employees are now eligible, right?
We did, and actually last night we were talking with not John Berry, Bill Wright from the county, and I don't want to speak because I don't know if Kathy knows yet, but it sounds like there might be something coming at the county Department of Health to allow public works workers to get something soon. I mean, I might be speaking out of turn, but it just kind of sounded that way yesterday, that instead of us traveling all over the place to get a shot, we might be able to do it right here in our county. So waiting to hear a little bit more information about that.
I'll keep you posted. I mean, I know the county's doing them, and I assume at some point they'll open it up, but I'll keep you posted on that. I do have a question on this. Is this, I think that boosters will be required. I don't know when or how. I don't think they've decided, but is this, it says maximum occurrence twice. Is that per calendar year or forever?
Well, right, we don't know. I mean,
Right.
we could certainly add that in there if you wanted to, per calendar year or whatever, but right, that's the question. There's so much unknown still, right?
And as you said, we can always, update them as, maybe we can just say something in there about, well, I guess that's implicit in it. So, all right, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, you just follow the guidance that comes from the CDC, the health departments, or whomever.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay. Next one here, this is resolution thanking John Robitella for his years of service to the ECB. Many of you know John John is incredible. He turns minutes around very, very quickly, does a very thorough job. John contacted me last fall wanting to step back a little bit, is just had too much on his plate. He's still going to do the planning board for us, the minutes for the planning board. He's still going to be involved with the drainage committee, and as we need him from time to time with some of the other stuff, but he wanted to us to try to find someone else for the ECB. So this thanks him for his service and everything that he's done for us with the ECB. You might remember last year we did a resolution right before the COVID really locked everything down. At the time, the Daughters of the American Revolution were planning a organized cleanup of Sucker Brook all throughout House Park and the open space that's owned by the town of Canandaigua along Sucker Brook up through near Old Brookside. Canandaigua Rotary Club, and specifically Jody Kaufman, who many of you know as a town resident, had came to me recently and said that they were looking to do a cleanup of Sucker Brook. And I said, I got just the place. We weren't able to do it last year because of COVID with the Daughters of the American Revolution. So they're teaming up together and they would like to do that on April 24th. So this gives them permission to enter a town property to do that. We'll be responsible for the trash. They'll leave it in bags and then our parks guys will go pick it up and then get rid of the trash. But they'll go through the outhouse or all through outhouse and through the open space down here next to the town hall along Sucker Brook doing a cleanup for us. So.
And Doug, is April 24th like Earth Day or something like that? Is there a specific thing about the day?
Yeah, it is. April, I think she told me Earth Day was April 20th or something, but I think the 24th is the Saturday closest.
Around that. Okay, I just wondered if it was linked to something like Earth Day.
Yep, it was. It related to Earth Day. The next resolution is acknowledgement of the annual fire department reports, all three fire entities. Some of you, I think, were still joining. We had to break apart the fire department reports separate from the agenda because we weren't able to upload the entire agenda. We had all kinds of trouble with it yesterday because it was so big. So it was an hour delayed in getting out to you. Sorry about that. But that's all. The fire department reports are separate because of that. So. My favorite resolution on the agenda. I just am so excited by this.
I think that's a typo.
Mr. Simpson has agreed to help out with the ECB. And Jared, do you want to touch on this, our conversation? I've been talking a lot. So
I don't remember having this conversation.
Oh, convenient. I should have recorded it. That should have been a Zoom meeting instead of in person. So,
we discussed, and we've been talking about a little while, ways to improve efficiency between the ECB and the Environmental Committee, since many of the tasks that both committees look at really overlap each other. Combining the two will allow people on the ECB, members of the ECB, to focus in on really on their areas of interest, because we have land use, we have transfer recycling, we have water quality, we have trees, we have all of those things that really encompass what the ECB and the Environmental Committee can do. So putting this together like this allows us to combine the two groups as we look to see what it's going to work, potentially changing the code to allow more flexibility with the group membership in the ECB, to make it flexible, to expand members when we have big projects coming up, and let members leave as time progresses, as those projects might be waning, and really will allow us to be more efficient and bring some, hopefully some renewed energy back around both of these groups.
And we had a ECB meeting. They meet the first Thursday of every month. At this month's meeting, I think we had 12 or 13 people in the meeting. There is interest, I think, in the ECB, and I know we have one vacancy right now. We have 3 people interested, excuse me, in the vacancy. But this resolution specifically would appoint Jared as the facilitator for the rest of the year as we work through some code updates and logistics and operations that we'll have to bring back to you, because it is in town code, so that would require local laws to do those updates, obviously. So.
Great, thanks for doing that, Jared.
Yes, thank you, Jared. Have I mentioned thank you, Jared? Thank you, Jared.
Yeah, I still haven't decided how I'm going to vote on this one, but I guess you guys will see on Monday.
This one, our history team has been active, and I know that they're looking forward to working with the new town historian. But the history team is led by Sarah Linda Hooker, and Sarah Linda was fantastic in helping us last go around to get the phase 1 cultural resource survey for the New York Preserve Grant Program to do the what they call the windshield survey of the historical properties in the town of Camp Douglas. So this would allow us to apply for the grant for phase 2. It is a budgeted expense. We put that in the budget. And this basically is the grant application, supporting the grant application. So any comments, questions on that? No. Next one is appointment of Kimberly Burkhardt as secretary to the ECB. Kimberly already has stepped up and actually joined the ECB this past meeting, but we had advertised for a secretary position, and Kimberly, her resume and stuff is attached. She is a community member with a lot of experience, been involved with a number of not-for-profits in the community, including with Sonnenberg, and she has a passionate interest in environmental conservation. So it seemed like a natural fit, and she's experienced in writing newsletters, in doing website updates, and taking notes. So it was a gift that kind of fell in our lap, to be
Great.
The next one is, I touched base with you on this. This is the joint 1-year recreation program resolution for the trial for this year. We did just push out the brochure. There's already interest in it. From what I understand, there's already quite a few people starting to talk to Heather about signing up for the joint program. Heather works in the city manager's office and will be coordinating the program for us, operating at 5 parks, Sonnenberg, Baker in the city, and then Owl House, Butler Road Schoolhouse, and then Ononda in the town of Camp Douglas. So, and then Linda's favorite, surety resolutions. So there's a lot there, everybody.
Yeah, that's a big agenda.
Does anybody have any questions about any of it? Anything?
Is it our intention then on the public hearing relative to 3950 Westlake Road that we're going to just continue it without giving people a chance to speak? Or are we having people talk about that one and then continuing it? What is the intention of that?
So we had continued the public hearing is still technically
It's open.
is open. And it's on the agenda. So really it would be up to the board. I would think you would probably want to open it, let anybody speak, and then continue it.
And then we would continue it into June so that we could skip a month of that. Okay. Anybody have any
There's a lot of
questions about
moving
the agenda?
pieces with
Yeah.
that. I'm sorry, there's a lot of moving pieces with that one. There's a variety of other things that the sellers are looking at, and that's an option agreement. That's a much different situation than the Tishner Point one. With that one being an option agreement that's in place, that we have time on that one.
All right. Are there any questions from anyone else about the agenda? I think you guys, Doug, you mentioned you and Kate might have some things that you needed to touch on after this, so the floor is yours again.
So Kate has done a phenomenal job of, Kate has taken us from just this confusion relative to the KVS financial system. We did the conversion, and then there was still confusion because of the way that the numbers were brought in. And she has worked meticulously, methodically through every single fund, every single line. And she's identified 4 topics specifically that we need to touch base on, that it sounds like, and Kate and I went through, Kate also did 100% of the AUD this year, which thank you. We went through it yesterday and went ahead and submitted it. It's all good. But these 4 last areas are the only areas that we believe that are left to clean up for the Tyler Technology software system. And Kate, please thank you, first of all. But please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Doug. And I apologize to the board and the committee for having to bring all of this more information to you after such a long agenda. A little bit much to think about today, but like Doug said, we've gone through and we've really dug into every single number And it's been a very challenging process, but at this time, I'm really proud to say that we're in a really great spot. We're very, very comfortable with the AUD. I think that there's a noticeable difference in the time it took for us to complete it this year, as it did last year. And I appreciate all your patience with that as we learned and worked through it, and really, really proud of where we are. And so, as Doug said, we do have a handful of things. And what I would say about them are there are things that I can't explain. And when the auditors come in, they ask us to explain it. And for one reason or another, these are items I'd like to discuss with the board that about potentially getting off of our books this year, resolving these last 4 issues so that we can move forward with not a single number that we can't explain. So primarily, the
And Kate,
majority.
Kate, just, I mean, all 4 of them are things that you've identified have carried over year after year. These aren't.
Yeah. So primarily, I have 2 accounts receivable. So in the water fund, if you recall, a few years ago, we received a Senate grant for $700,000 to install the County Road 10 water main. And that particular grant took a little bit of time to actually get received by the town. And so in the time between when the actual work was being done on County Road 10 and the grant was received, there was an entry that was booked for an accounts receivable. And what it was is only a partial receipt of what we had spent to date on the project. I think it was about 2017 or 2018, because we actually received the funds in 2019. And what happened is $301,547 is what we had spent. That got booked as an accounts receivable, which technically should have been due from other governments, not an accounts receivable. And so what happened is once we did the following year book the due from other governments, the accounts receivable was never reversed. So the due from other governments was booked at the full 700,000, and the accounts receivable, because it wasn't in really the right spot, I think, got forgotten about. It never got reversed. So I can see on our audit that for the last 3 years, we've carried the exact same amount of accounts receivable for water. And when I could get into KVS prior to the issue we had with the ransomware, I was able to identify that it was the County Road 10 project. So
And
I
that
received
was
the money.
also, if I just could, that was also, just board members keep in mind, that was also the conversion from KVS.
It was.
So
It was. Yes. Yeah. So we received the 700. At the time when I received it, I could see clearly there was the 700 due from other governments. I reversed that out against the revenue, and we have this 301,547 remaining. So what concerns me is that it's booked as an asset, and year over year, we know that that's not at this time going to come in. So we're actually overstating our assets slightly by this amount.
$800,000, significant, yeah.
Yeah. So instead of just having a conversation between Doug and I, we wanted to bring it to the committee, as this correction would decrease the cash on hand and the fund balance in the water district by the $300,000.
So do we know what the original entry was that established the receivable? What was the offset in that original entry?
It was the expense of the water project. So there were expenses to the water project. And then oftentimes what the previous bookkeeper would do would be to make an entry kind of as a placeholder to put a revenue in for expenses that have been spent, because it wasn't technically a capital project. So this was booked as an asset to offset the expenses that had been incurred to date, even though the project hadn't been completed yet. It was in transition at the end of the year.
So does it mean that the actual capitalized asset that we put on the books is $300,000 short because it was reduced when we established this receivable? Is that water facility really, did it really have $300,000 worth of expenses that essentially disappeared when we created the receivable?
It didn't. So it was corrected when the full 700,000 was booked correctly as a due from other governments.
And then what did that offset against?
That offset against the full project, but because it wasn't a capital project, but it was through the fund and elapsed multiple years, there was, I think, a little bit of confusion in how to address the expense of the project.
So for me, I always do the T accounts and figure out where is the gap. Do you know where that $300,000 that's now sitting in our asset account, where was it left? Like what did we overstate at what time? Or, you don't have to know precisely, but what do you think happened with that 300?
So as I said, I think what happened is the 300 was spent, and because the 300 was spent, we'll say 2018, just for sake of giving it a year. So in 2018, the expense was spent out of the SW 500 district. Then the asset as a due from was booked in order not to have the expenses exceed the revenues that year, the assets. And so that carried to the next year because, again, the project wasn't finished all within 2018 and the revenue wasn't received from the Senate grant in 2018. So it rolled over to 2019. And then what happened is an additional entry got booked as due from other governments in both Encode and KBS for the full 700. It did not reduce the 300 and put the 700 in as due from other governments like it should have. It should have reversed the 300.
Right, it should have been a net effect of 300, but so that means there's 300 somewhere in an account, or mentally that was in an account. Do you know where that was?
So the piece.
I was just going to say, so basically, right, Kate, we're overstating cash by 300, Linda.
Right, correct.
But our cash, we tie right to the bank account. So how do we know we're overstating cash?
That piece of tying the cash to the bank accounts has been the most challenging piece for me. And when it comes to general, highway, and water, those three moving targets, I have never been able to tie to the penny down to the bank account.
But this would
This
would be $300,000. That's bigger than a penny. I mean, so have you had a gap of 300,000?
We've had a gap larger than that we have worked on reducing. That we have consistently reduced.
Keep in mind, Linda, as Kate was just saying, the cash is the general fund, the highway fund, the water districts. It's all combined in one. So that's the challenge with it.
Mm-hmm. And I can tie every single small district, every single special district. Everything ties to the penny. It's those three large districts where I've talked to Doug several times. We don't trust the cash number from KBS to begin with. In those three districts, we know that there were some discrepancies in the actual cash number. And that is something that in doing these entries where we know these things are not correct, the goal is to be able to identify directly each of those funds to the cash accounts.
But that also, just so the board's aware, that goes back, we even looked at cash January 1st, 2014, okay? And what was reported in KBS did not match the cash in the bank account. So there's this discrepancy. That's what Kate's working on, trying to clean up. It's ridiculous. It's carried on for almost a decade, if not longer.
So what I would say is maybe the way forward is for you to tell us all four of these items rather than us to deep dive into one. Then I'd love for maybe Joe and I to sit down with you to kind of just go through, make sure that all of our heads are on the same place about it, rather than drag everybody through T accounts. But I'd like to go through them myself, just because I want to feel confident that I trust what you're doing. I mean, I really do. I just want to get my head around it. So if somebody ever asks me, I know that I understand it.
Sure, absolutely. I understand. And the one limitation we're going to experience is that we do not have access to the KBS actual program itself. We just need to
So you're kind of like digging things out of, a paper bin or something.
what I can. Yeah, what I can. I'm using what I had as notes prior. I had printed a lot of stuff from KVS. So using my notes and those notes. And then and when you see an accounts receivable year after year after year remain exactly the same.
Oh, yeah. There's something.
There's no revenue that shows it. It's
Right, definitely something wrong. What are the other 3 items? You mentioned there were 4.
sure. So I have another accounts receivable in the Canandaigua Bristol district. That's $2,317. Again, that one has carried over several years, and I can't identify a revenue that was received in 2019 or 2020 that would have been for that amount. So I at that point, I'm pretty confident. Again, I can't find a number that matches that revenue. With an accounts receivable, you usually have an invoice at the end of the year. There's usually some paper trail of saying this is due to us. And with this one, I can't find anything for that one either. And really, I can't find any detail even on the project or what it would have been for that one.
And just so the board knows too, with actually all 4 of these, right, Kate, the auditors, these have previously been identified in audits from prior years as just outstanding receivables.
Yep, yeah, they just carry over the exact same number year after year. And they say, hey, can you explain this? And I say, well, I can explain this much, and then this much is left.
Right, okay.
And what I'd like to do is be able to take those this much
We
is
need to
left.
clean them up. Yes, we need to clean them up.
Yeah.
So
So that
2 more?
the third in the general fund is an accounts receivable. In the general fund, we track accounts receivable mostly as chargebacks in the general fund, and then there's only a handful of invoices at the end of the year. The chargebacks are reconciled. Sam had previously been doing a monthly reconciliation, and with her absence, I've been carrying it over. But we can look back on chargebacks years and years and years, and I can see that there's a discrepancy of $14,137 in the accounts receivable that don't match up to chargebacks. The total receivable is $38,700. $24,600 of that matches up for chargebacks, which leaves a balance of $14,137, which I again just simply can't explain. It's a carryover number. It's been there, and it is overstating our assets. And then the last item, which I really truly believe is a import issue. This has to do with the payroll withholdings. And the way that works is when payroll is processed, the town sometimes, especially with like medical health insurance, we will pay the bill, and then the following 2 payrolls, it will be collected from the paychecks, and that will zero out the liability for the town. And so I'm very confident that what happened is the import figures for Encode were provided perhaps the end of November, beginning of December, and then the payrolls in December came through and zeroed those out, and they were never zeroed out for the Encode starting figure. Samantha she was amazing. She is amazing, continues to be, and she would calculate those withholdings down to the penny. She was very, very close and accurate with those. And I can see that every year since, well, what would be 2019 and 2020, our payroll withholdings zero out at the end of the year. There is no carryover. And so these carryover numbers, they total just about $26,000, which is mostly health insurance. That's not an unusual number for our health insurance. It's a liability to the town. And what I would like to do is clear those as well.
And have you discussed this with the auditors in terms of what they would recommend that we do for these amounts?
I have not brought them to the auditors yet. At times when I have asked them for recommendations, they have said to me, well, you guys come up with some ideas and we'll tell you if that's okay or not.
Okay.
They don't often
They don't
suggest.
try to do it. They can't solve it for us, but I just wondered if we could discuss with them. So not yet is the answer.
I have not addressed it with them yet, no.
But the fantastic news is, keep in mind, we operate 30 different funds,
Oh,
30
yeah.
different districts and,
Yep.
and
We're
all
down
these
to 4.
reserve funds and everything else. And she's got this down. I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
literally hundreds of account lines, and she's
No,
got it
I
over
think-
these 4.
It's quite a job, and I'm not underestimating the amount of work that I know you put into this. And it's good to get them all cleared up. I just wanted to make sure that we, I'm sure the auditors will end up mentioning this they'll have to in their opinion for the year. So it's good to.
So at this time, everything I have done for 2020, I have kept consistent. If we were to book any of these entries, they would be in 2021. So
Well,
this,
or they
these,
could be, or the auditors could recommend them for 2020 before the end of the year. These are, and we could get them cleared up and they could be in our rearview mirror instead of waiting for 2021. So long as we came up with the entries and gave it to them, we might be able to just put it into the end of the year stuff. Because we're not at the audit yet, right?
we're not at the audit, but we have completed the annual report for the state with this information in it. So we would need to do an amendment to our AUD if we were to edit them for 2020.
Okay. So Joe,
Either way is possible.
So Joe, are you willing to kind of go through it with us? Because I know your head is more recently in accounting than mine.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Just let me know when.
Let's try to set up a meeting if we
Okay.
could. And let's just go through each of them and let us bounce ideas around so that we get. Is that all right with the rest of the board?
Yes.
And thank you for doing that. And thank you, Kate. When I called yesterday or emailed to find out if the AUD was done, I expected us still to have issues. And you said it was done and I almost fainted. So you did a great job. It's one of those things that looms in the back of my head in March. But so thank you very much. It's amazing how much it's changed since the beginning.
Yeah, really.
This is the earliest that I ever remember the AUD getting filed, so.
It helped that Doug was so busy, he didn't give me other projects to work on in his office by himself, so I could just keep working through it.
Perfect.
And Joe and Linda, thank you very much as well.
Yeah, so I'll be in touch. We'll get an email together and get an appointment scheduled.
All right,
Okay,
good.
great.
That'll
Thank
work.
you. Yep.
That's been the challenge all along, though, those KVS numbers. I mean, even you can see when they converted to KVS, we saw prior to losing that system. We lost that system with that ransomware attack, but we
Right.
saw even with the import numbers into KVS, we could see that they didn't jive. So we knew that their import, whenever that was done, 2000, Terry, when was that done? 10, 11?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Somewhere. Their numbers were wrong when they started, and then that just carried all through to now that Kate's finally able to start cleaning up. So
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
going to be
something
great
like
to
that.
have it completely clean. That'll be the nicest feeling. So, all right, Doug and Kate, do you have more for us?
nope.
No? Oh my gosh.
Next Thursday, though, I will give you a little hint preview. I've been working with multiple vendors on collecting quotes for updating our telephone system.
Oh,
So that's what I will present to you next Thursday is the quotes we've received, the different options for upgrading and what that might look like, and get your input on a recommendation to the board.
all right, great. Anyone else with any good news that they want to share?
I know the state might give us back some of the CHIPS extreme weather recovery and pave New York, I don't know when, but they're supposed to give us back 50% of the 20% they held, which
Oh,
is
great.
a lot of money, but I don't know when it's coming. We got told that this week, so
It's good news.
we'll see.
Perfect.
That's last year's funds, Jim?
Yeah, last year's funds, Kate, which Caitlin submitted for the 100%, and we got 80. So we'll see what we get.
It was dependent upon how much the federal government gave the state. And I think whatever that number is.
So that'll bring us up to 90%. So if we get 50% of the 20, that's 90% of what we expected. So that's a nice windfall.
It's a little revenue, but
Yeah,
I don't know what we're gonna get. Like I said, I have no idea.
Probably get it in 2022.
right, exactly.
Let's
I was
not
gonna
put,
say, I'm not gonna hold my breath.
and we won't book a receivable until we're sure we're gonna get.
Yeah, no. No receivables.
Speaking with Jan yesterday on the phone about this year's budget. She says, Albany is not the place to be right now and trying to get the budget done with what's going on with the governor. So
All right,
pretty disarray down there.
True.
yeah,
So
okay.
we'll
So
see.
then, if nothing else, then we'll adjourn.
Okay.
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 Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for coming out.
Good. Everybody have a great day also. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.